Okay, so good morning. This is my first DAF to be taught teaching as part of the HAR team on in Maseches Bava Kamma. So it's hope that you have enjoyed the first 4 days of Bava Kamma as we come on to DAF Vav. Bava Kamma. Oh, excellent question. Bava Kamma means the first gate, the first gate. And this is, and what happened is that the Maseches that was called Nezikin was broken up into three different pieces, and it was broken up into the first gate, the middle gate, and the last gate. And so that's what Bava Kamma, Bava Metzia, and Bava Basra means. And really, so from that perspective, it's all about understanding various laws of damage. And so we're going to talk about today the different categories of that damage can occur through. And I'm going to share my screen and we'll review the Mishnah that outlined four different categories. Now, we saw that actually these four categories can even be broken into 13 or 24 different categories known as Avot Nezikin. But our Mishnah referenced four of them. What are they? They're ox. So that is where your property does damage and it goes and it moves and it isn't where it specifically was originally, and it does damage somewhere else effectively. And there can be three different versions of this we've seen. We've seen that there can be a version where it's sort of just doing damage. That's known as keren, where it's just ramming with its horn. There's a version that's called shane. That's where it's eating with its it means tooth, and it's eating with its mouth. And that's where it's getting some benefit. So, for example, not only is eating an example, but if it rubs itself against something because it's got a scratch, it's got an itch that it wants to scratch. So then that would also be considered part of shane. And then there's regel. Regel is where it's just walking, meaning as it goes. It's not trying to, if it were to kick something and to try to do damage to it, then that would go back to keren. But if it's just walking along its route, well, then that is something that is a normal behavior for it to do. Everybody knows it. But at the same time, if it steps on something while it's walking, that is going to and crush it. If these animals are pretty heavy, that is going to be regel damage. That was category number one. Category number two is pit. The pit, boar. That, and again, the ox category is referred to as shore, and because shore means ox. And category number two is boar, meaning pit. And the pit category is anything that is sort of like not moving and a hazard. So, for example, if you were to leave, if you were to freeze some water on the sidewalk, and then somebody comes and slips on it, even though that's not a pit, but that would be considered in the category of pit. And that's where you do something that creates a dangerous situation. The question is does it have to be not in your domain? Does it have to be in property that you do not own? That's a debate that we will see, by the way, as the course of today, between Rav and Shmuel. Those are two other rabbis that we're going to have today. That's category number two. Category number three is mave. Mave is a category where there's actually a debate as to what it means. According to Rav, it refers to man. According to Shmuel, it refers to shane. It refers to eating, an animal eating. So that's a category where we're not clear, but that's category number three. And then category number four is fire. Fire is where you create something that does not have a mind of its own, and combines with another force, in the case of fire, wind, to do damage somewhere. So, there's a debate as to whether the wind is considered an extra a thing that makes it more likely to be liable or less likely to be liable, but it makes it, in any event, it makes it different. It makes it different from the other categories. In the other categories, there isn't a second force that is moving the object to have damage be caused. And so in each of these categories, we're going to see that there are special rules associated with them. We haven't really gotten into those special rules yet, but we will be seeing that. So the Mishnah and the Gemara that we've gone through so far noted the differences between these four categories. So again, for example, the ox category, is alive, as is mave, but pit and fire are not. All of the category, pit stays where it is, and it began as something that was dangerous from its very initial creation. Fire works with another power. Ox again has a mind of its own and belongs to you, and either Mave is man, in which case it's you, and that's completely different, or it's Shane and it's getting some benefit associated with it. So there's every one of these has its own unique aspects that are different from the others. Yes, please, Stan.
Discuss acts of nature like lightning strikes your home and the home burns to the ground.
Well, there it's going to be hard to find liability with somebody else. So, but the question is of whether if lightning were to strike your, let's say were to strike not necessarily your home, but your field, and now your field is on fire, and then the wind takes that fire into somebody else to the next field. That actually will be touched on during the course of today. So your question is incredibly appropriate, because we will see that when something that is not your responsibility happens, you have a set amount of time where you're expected to deal with it, and then it becomes on some level your responsibility. However, we're going to see some limitations on that as well. So there are times where basically in that case, my expectation is that assuming that you never wanted that fire and you're not trying to harness that fire, it will probably be a situation where unless the rabbi say, listen, you better put out that fire, you're probably going to not be liable. Exactly. Okay, so now that was the house. What happens in the house? So unfortunately, it burned down, and you're going to hopefully have insurance, so that hopefully you'll be able to rebuild and collect. Exactly. So, but now we're going to note that there were also things that were common across the four categories, and that's where we're going to pick up right now. So Hatzara Shavasha Behen, we're at the top line. We end the last word on the top line at the two dots of Bava Amud Aleph 6a. So the tzara shavasha behen, and what was that tzara shava? What was the common characteristic? It was that the owner must watch the item, and he must pay for any damages using the best of his field. So we're going to focus on that common question now. So so the fact that I said that all of these things have these two characteristics, that you pay from the best and you have to watch it, that suggests that maybe there's something else where you also have to pay for the best and you have to watch. So what is it that that language in our Mishnah comes to include? And we're going to give four different answers, and all four answers are going to work. So it's four different opinions, but they all actually work. And let's take a look in Rashi. It's the Rashi 1, 2, 3, 5 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. That's the literal quote from our Mishnah. But then Rashi actually adds in two additional words from our Mishnah, Shedarkan Lahazik, that they have they tend to create damage. Dimashma, this implies, right, the fact that we were to say that there is something that is a characteristic that is common across all four of these categories, that would imply av kol shedarko lahazik ushmira so alecha, everything else that also has the characteristic of the thing it does damage and is likely to and you need to watch it, should also be in the category of things that you have to pay full damages and damages or damages according to using the best of your property. So what is it coming to include? So answer number one offered by Abaye is the following. Amar Abaye lasuye avno sakino umasa o she'nichan berosh hagago v'naflo beruach mitzuya v'hiziko. So we're talking about it coming to include a stone or a knife or some kind of package that you would carry that you leave on your roof, because your roof is a storage location in your home in those days, and it falls in a normal wind, meaning you did not put it in a secure location, because a secure location would secure it from a normal wind. But here, the normal wind, it caused it to fall, and now it did damage. So now we're going to ask, hey, dummy, what are we talking about? Is it that when it fell, it landed on somebody? What's the story? So if you're going to tell me that it was when it was on its way down and falling as a result of the wind that it did damage, that's already covered by one of our four categories. You only need one category to teach us that one, because it is in the category of Aish. Maishna Aish. How is fire different from this case? Because here we have a package, a stone, a knife that falls off. It's something that belongs to you. It's mamoncha. Another force came and acted on it, and you needed to be more careful. All of those are categories. All of those things describe Aish. And so as a result, we could learn it just from Aish. So haninami koach akar ma'orav bahen umamoncha ushmiraso alecha. All of these things also apply to the objects that we're talking about that were put on your roof. So you've got to say, all right, it's not when it's falling, it's landed now. And now that it landed, somebody came and tripped over it and was damaged. But now if in fact you made it hefker, well then Bain Larav, Bain Lashmuel, Hainu Bor. Now, what you have down on the floor as a result, this stone, this knife, this package that is doing damage, there's no difference between that and a bore. A bore is something you place down and it does damage there, and you dig out a hole and now it does damage there. And here too, these are things that have now landed in this location and it's going to do damage in that location. So that's going to be just like bor. And according to Rav and Shmuel, if you made it hefker, it's considered bor. So Maishna bor shekain tchilaso asiyaso lenezek l'mon chadash shmiraso an alecha haninami tchilas asiyasan lenezek l'mon chadash shmiraso an alecha. All these things have the common characteristics of being something that does damage from the very beginning and belongs to you and is something that you need to watch. And so as a result, so what are we talking about? Ella the lo afgarenu? You're going to tell me that we didn't make it hefker? Well, the Shmuel de Amr Kula Mibora Lamadnu Hainuvor. According to Shmuel, also, even if you don't make it hefker, it's still bor. Now, I will pause for a moment to note here that that according to Rav says that if it's not ownerless, then we learn it also from ox. And so as a result, it's actually a combination of ox and bor that teaches us a non-hefker stone, knife, or package that would be a problem. So as a result, he actually would have a valid, according to this explanation, according to Abaye, it would actually work according to Rav. But we're asking that it needs to work according to everybody, because this is our Mishnah talking, and Shmuel is an Amora, and Amora can't argue with our Mishnah. So as a result, he needs to have a category that it would work to him. So how can Abaye say that we're talking about this stone, knife, or bird, or package that fell off the roof? It's going to be learned from one of the four categories, not from multiple of them. So la'olam da'afgarinhu, So the Gemara answers that really we can say that we're talking about where it was declared ownerless. Below Damalavor. And even though both Rav and Shmuel would ordinarily say that if you have a package that you leave in the middle of the street and that package you make ownerless, so now you've abandoned it, that package, if it does damage, you are liable because of the concept of bore, meaning you left something in a place where it could do damage, and now it's done damage, you are liable. So why is this case different? So malavor shekain ein koach achar ma'orav bo tomer bahani shekoach achar ma'orav bahen. You can't learn it actually directly from bore. You can't learn this package, stone, or knife that's now found in somewhere in Rishus Harabim, somewhere in the public thoroughfare, from a regular case of a bore, because in the regular case of bore, there's never another force that is acting on the object. There's never another item that is influencing its location. Unlike these three items where they were put on your roof and a normal wind, came and blew them off. And so as a result, another force did impact it. So as a result, Eish Tochiach, that's why we need to learn this category, not just from bore, but we need to combine it with Eish. And Mala Eish came Darko Lele Hulahazik, just as fire's custom is to go from its first location to do damage somewhere else, so too that this item also. But one second, this item is not doing damage as it goes, it is where it's located. So at the end of the day, even though there was another power that came to influence it, it's not doing damage through its moving the way fire does. So how can you learn it from fire? And the answer is bor tochiach. Bor, the concept of bor, will teach us b'chazar adin. So we have a rotating logic. It is a combination of bor, which tells us that something in one location is going to be problematic, and eish, which tells us that even if there's some other force that becomes involved, it's also going to be problematic. That those two things working together tell us that if you leave a package on your roof and it blows off in a normal wind, you are still going to be liable. So that was Abaye's answer. Now answer number 2 to our question. So I'm just going to mark these all in. You like Abaye's answer? Good. Yeah, I like Abaye's answer too. I think I often like Abaye's answer, even though we don't always paskin like Abaye's answer. But okay, so Rava Amar Asuye bor hamisgalgel beragle adamu veragle bahema. So the new category is what happens if you have a rock or some kind of pit-like object. It's something that guys, got something that does damage in the Rishus Harabim, but it moves, it rolls. So again, it is a pit, and a pit is in quotes because it's not a literal pit. Obviously, a pit doesn't move, but something that is categorical like a pit. So it could be the package, the knife, the stone that we were talking about before. And it rolls, it moves around, not through the wind, which was our first case, but rather because people kick it during, while they're walking through Rishus Harabim, while they're walking through the thoroughfare. And so as a result, eventually it ends up in a new location, and now it does damage in that new location. So, hey, Chidami, again, what are the circumstances? Who, if it became ownerless after, before the person does damage, before it does damage. So, Bein l'Rav, Bein l'Shmuel, Hainu bor. Well, now again, we have that same concept that's according to Rav and Shmuel, that's considered bor. So Maishna bor, how is it different from bor? Again, it's from the very beginning, it's something that was going to do damage or likely to do damage, and you have to watch it. Haninami, These things as well. They are things that are likely to do damage, and you need to watch them. El Deloav Karina. So you want to say it's not, you didn't make it ownerless? Well, the Shmuel da Amar Kulami Boro Lamanu Hainu Bor. But again, even at least according to Shmuel, it's going to be a bore. So how can we learn? What are we learning from? How do we learn this item from multiple situations? It seems that you could learn it just from a single one. So la'olam da'af garinhu v'lo dami labor. Really, we're talking about where you did make it hefker, and why is it that both Rav and Shmuel say that this is not like a pit? Malavor shekain ma'asav garmolo. That when it came to a pit, it was its creation that was causing the damage that eventually to happen, because it stays where it is. But Tomer Bahani Shein Ma'asav Garmalo, can you really say that when I put this, bowling ball, here in the Rishos Harabim, and now, the animals kick it this way and kick it that way, and eventually, it's now in a new location, and somebody stubs their toe, or trips and falls, and God forbid breaks their hip as a result of it, and so as a result they become damaged through it. So how can you say that my original action was what was the primary causation factor? Because I didn't put it over here, I put it over there. People just knocked it around until it got over here. So it shouldn't be my full responsibility. So sure, Yochia. No, we can use a combination of the bore concept of something that is in Rishos Harabim that is likely to do damage with the concept of shore, because a shore also, I didn't leave my animal here in this location. I may have left my animal somewhere else, but because it's my animal, and even though it moves around, so now I'm going to be responsible. So Malashor, but then 1 second, Malashor Shekain Darko Lelechulah, when a shore, an aspect of it is it goes forth and does damage, meaning it's doing damage as it goes. So bor tochiach. So then we can use the concept of pit. So basically, with respect to the concept that the bowling ball that I'm talking about, is doing damage in a single location and not a moving damage, and certainly doesn't move on its own, well, then that's where we're going to use the bore concept. And with respect to the fact that it isn't in its original location, that's where we'll bring in the shore concept. And so together, the shore and the bore, will use the two items together, and each one is different from the other. And so as a result, we'll combine the two in order to learn it together. So that's case number 2. So again, case number 1 was the package on the roof, and we combined bore and aish. Now we're combining bore and shore, and that will be the same combination that we'll do for the next 2 as well, bore and shore. So Rav Ada bar Ahava Amar, he offers answer number 3. Answer number 3 is as follows. So La'asuye Hadatanya, we're going to learn it in the following brisa. It's the case of this brisa. Kol elusha amru potchin vivosehen vigorfin ma'aroseihem. That when it comes to say those who say that you're allowed to open the waste pipes and shovel out the pits of poop. So bimot hachama ein lahem reshus. You're not allowed to do that in the summer. Why are you not allowed to do that in summer? Because 1, it will stink a lot more, and 2 is you're putting out wet stuff when people don't expect wet stuff, right? In the winter, when it's rainy in Israel and in Mesopotamia, so then people expect that there will be wet stuff around. But when you're dealing with the summer and nobody expects any wet stuff, and people are likely to trip, people don't look necessarily where they're going. So, but the yemota geshamim yesh lahem reshus. So in the winter time, you do have permission to throw out your waste. But afal pi shebrishus, even though you have permission, im hiziku chayavim l'shalom. If it does damage, you do still have to pay. So you have permission, but if it does damage, you have to pay. So that is what we're talking about. It is that concept of that waste product that we're allowing. So 1 second, but hey, Hidami, again, we have this problem because it seems like maybe we could learn this waste product rule from one of the four categories and not have to use two of the four categories. So, if you tell me that it's as you're shoveling it out that you throw it and you put it on something and it ruins the object, well, then kokohu, it's the man's effort. It's the man's shoveling that did that. That's not going to be considered a multiple factor. We could just put that under the category of man. Elabusser denayach. So it must be that it has already landed. So hechidami ida afgarinhu. Bain l'rav, bain l'shmuel, hainu bor. Again, if you've already landed and it's staying where it is, well, then isn't this a category of bor? So no, Maishna bor de tchilaso asiyaso lenezek mimoncha shmiraso alecha. That again, in the case of bor, it was originally from the very beginning, it was something that could cause damage, and it's your responsibility, your property, and so as a result, you need to watch it. V'hani nami tchilaso. So too here, you need to watch it, and it's your property. I mean, it's something that does damage. It's your property, and you need to therefore watch it. So you're going to tell me that you didn't make it hefker. Well, then again, even in that situation, Shmuel says it's still you just learn it from bor. So hainu bor. So la'olam da'afkarinu. No, really, you can say that it is even made it hefker. And why is it that according to Rav and Shmuel, this is not comparable to bor below dami labor? It's not comparable to bor completely because ma labor shekain shalo birshus. When you created that bor in the first place, you never had permission to do it because Mark, do you have permission to go out into the middle of Netherland Avenue and to dig a hole? You do not, exactly. And so as a result, that is correct. And so as a result, you do not have that permission. But in this particular case, Dan, did you have permission to throw the waste out into the middle of the street? No, you did. You did have permission to throw the waste out, right? It's in the winter season. I should have added that. You may have been thinking the summer. In the winter season, do you have permission to throw the waste out? Yes, you do have permission. So it's different. So how do you learn that? So Tarmar behind Birshus, right? This is a case of permission as we turn to Vav Amubet. So sure, Yochiach. So how do we then figure out that we can learn that this is going to be something that you're liable for? It's by combining the concept of bor with the concept of shore, because shore shows that even when you have permission for the animal to be there, right? The animal has permission to walk in the Rishus Harabim, in the public thoroughfare. So Malashor Shekain Darko Leila Kulahazik. But 1 second, when you have the shore, that's something. Mark, can you help them downstairs? Okay, terrific. So when it comes to shore, so then that is a concept of something that does damage as it goes. I'll see you next time. See you tomorrow. So therefore, that's going to be a problem. And why? And that's different from the poop that you're shoveling out. That doesn't have the concept of going. Once it's landed, that poop ain't going anywhere. So as a result, that's different. So bor tochiach. So bor will tell us about the fact that the waste doesn't move. So as a result, we can combine shore, which deals with the concept of permission, and bor, which deals with the concept of non-moving object. So v'chazar hadin, and then the logic repeats because you'll ask the question on the bor. What about the fact that you had permission? So again, we go back to the shore. You'll ask on the shore, what about the fact that that this one isn't moving? So you go back to the bor, and so on and so on. So the bottom line is you use the two concepts together. Ravina Amar La'asuye Haditnan. So now we have the fourth of our four answers, and he says the following. It's the case in a Mishnah. This Mishnah is from Bava Metzia. And what does it say? Hakosa, and this is touches on the concept, the question that you asked stand at the very beginning. So here we have it. So hakosel v'ha'ilan shenaflu l'rishos harabim v'hiziko. You have a wall or a tree that fell into a public domain and caused damage. Okay, so now pater milashalim, you don't have to pay. Okay, so the bottom line is you don't have to pay. Nasnu lo zman lakotz es ha'ilan v'listor es hakosel. What happens if they see, you know what, this is likely to fall, this wall or tree, and so you need to go and remove it. And so the authorities come, the Beit Din tells you, you better do it, and you have to move it by next Tuesday. Now, if they say naflu b'toch hazman, if it falls before next Tuesday, the hiziko, and it does damage, putter, you're putter. You still had more time to deal with it, and so as a result, you didn't. It may not, because the deadline hasn't come. You're all right. But la'achar hazman, but if it falls after that time, you're going to be chayiv. You're chayiv. So now we're going to say, so that situation, that last situation of where you have been warned that you need to deal with your wall or tree that looks like it's going to fall, and you fail to deal with it in a timely manner, that's the situation that we're going to say is a combination of multiple factors in our mission.
You have time. They give you till next Tuesday. The tree falls before the Tuesday, but injures someone.
Yes, that's we're saying you're not liable.
Not even if it injures someone.
Even if it injures somebody, that's the point. That's exactly right. Because they gave you until next Tuesday, and you didn't, and it wasn't next Tuesday. So that's why they're going to set the shortest deadline that they possibly can to make sure that and factoring in how likely it is that it's going to fall. Right? If it's likely to fall tomorrow, then they'll tell you they won't give you the Tuesday. Exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly. So again, now heichidami, what's the circumstances? So what's the case that we're talking about? Ida afkara, again, if it fell and you said that it's going to be ownerless, and now and again, we're talking about a situation where it fell after the deadline that you were given. So bein l'rav, bein l'shmuel, hainu bor. Why do you need somebody else's factor? Why do you need another factor to come into the play? It's a case of bor. You're responsible for the fact that it's there because you didn't move it in time. You didn't deal with it in time. And so as a result, it's just a plain case of bor. So maishna bor daziko matsoi ushmira soalacha, right? This is a bor is something that does damage on a regular basis and is a and you have to watch. So and so too, Haninami Hazika Matsu Shmira Sanaleka. This too as well. It's something that damage is frequent and you need to watch. Now Rashi here notes what you may have remembered during the last few days. We said that the object that is something that is regular that does damage in a common manner, that's usually called regel. Regel is something that is very common to do damage. So here we are asking the following case. So question. So let's take a look in Rashi. Three lines down from the top of Bava Mabet. Maishna bor shekain heziku matzui shederach shenoflin sham behemos. That it is common that when you have a wall fall down in Rishos Harabim or a tree fall down in Rishos Harabim from your field, so that it's common that that animals will fall into it just like they'll fall into a pit. The kasha ha milsa de amran lael de regel hazikui matzui. 1 second, you might say, well, didn't we call regel the thing that was commonly causes damage, the low bore, and we said that was not about a pit? Lav pirchahi, that's not really a question. De bor heziku matzui, that yes, the bore, the pit, is the thing that does also has common damage. It's not quite as common as ki regel, like a regel, like the foot. Shekol shah hi malechas, because at every moment that foot is stomping on something, and that is putting that full power and force of the animal on the ground, and so every step is a moment of potential damage. Well, the pit isn't quite that bad, but every time somebody walks by it is also it's an opportunity for it to do damage. So as a result, even if it isn't quite as common as regel, we're still going to say it's common. So, but the bottom line is that is a reason that we would think that maybe you should be able to learn these cases just from bor. And and if you didn't make it hefker, well, again, l'shmul de amar kulam miboro lamanu hainu bor. Again, it's all bor. So why can how are you trying to say? Again, this is Ravina's answer. Ravina, you wanted to say that we're learning about the case of where somebody had a wall or tree and was warned by Beis Din to take it down or to fix it, and they didn't do so by the deadline, that should simply be covered by a case of bor. So la'olam to afgarinhu. No, really, we're going to say that it's a case where it was made ownerless. And why don't we say that it's exactly comparable to a pit? The low dami labor, it's not perfectly analogous to a pit, because ma labor shekain tchilas asiyas from the very moment that it was created, the pit was there in order to and likely to do damage. But Tomer Bahani, Shein Tchilas Asiyasam Lenezek, these things from their very beginning, it was a wall, it was a tree, it wasn't something that was likely to do damage. So sure, Yochia. So we can use a combination of the fact that that sure, which when from its initial inception, right? An ox is not a damaging creature. It's not, it by its nature isn't a creature of damage. So mala shorshikin darko lelich lahazik. Oh, but 1 second, you want to say that shore is different because it goes and does damage. And obviously, this fallen tree and fallen wall do not move and therefore cannot create damage from that perspective. So now we can use the concept of bor. So v'chazar adin. And so we have these two things working together, and it ends up all repeating itself. And so again, in all three of the last three cases, we combine the concept of bor, non-movable damaging object, and shore, either using the aspect of shore as something that has permission, shore as something that that does not sure that's something that is not inherently do damage, and sure that was and sure that was not it's not in its original location. So even though it's not in its original location, even though it has permission, and even though it is was the third one, not in its original location, and it is and you had permission, right? So again, it could be that it's not in its original location. It can be that it has permission, and it can be that that it wasn't originally going to cause damage. So those are the three different concepts that we can learn from shore to help bor cover these last three cases. So again, we ended up with 4 different cases. So case number 1, according to Abaye, was the case of a stone knife or package that was left on the roof. Case number 2 was a rolling pit. Case number 3 was the waste during the winter time, and case number 4 was a tree or wall that falls after being warned. Okay, so now that we've got all of that, we're ready to continue with the next piece. We're at the 2 dots on Bava Mavet. So kishehizik chav hamazik. So the Mishnah used an odd language. It said chav rather than chayiv. So chav hamazik, chayiv hamazik mi boile. It should have said chayiv. Why did it say chav? So Amar of Yehuda, Amar Rav, had Tana Yerushalmihu. This particular Tana was from Yerushalayim. The Tani Lishna Kalila, and he used a shortened language, and so that's why it said Chav. So we explained why it used Chav, because that was the customary language from that particular Tana. And Rabbi Yehuda, when he gathered together all of the Mishnayos, he would keep the language of the particular Tanaim who taught that particular Mishnah. So l'sham tashlumi nezek, Now, we said that when you came to the last line in our Mishnah said that when you pay the damage, you have to pay from the nicest field. So what in the world does that mean? So now we're going to have a Baraisa that outlines a debate between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva that we will start today and continue tomorrow. So Tanarabanan, Meitav Sadeo, Meitav Karmo, Liyashalem. You should pay from the nicest field and from the best vineyard. So Meitav Sadeo Shal Nizak, O Meitav Karmo Shal Nizak, Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, it means that you have to pay based on the nicest field of the damaged party's field. So if in fact you damage John and John's nicest field is a field that is worth X dollars per square foot, then you have to pay him with property that is worth at least X dollars per square foot, according to Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva Omer lo ba'akasav eligbot linazikin min ha'idis v'kal v'chomer lehektish. No, it's coming to tell you that you have to collect damages from the nicest land. Now, we will see, we'll understand this in a moment, but it will be clear that what Rabbi Akiva is saying is that no, don't focus on the value of the damaged party's land. Focus on the property that belongs to the person who did the damage. And that person's nicest field is how you need to pay. So if the person has a property that's worth $100 a square foot, and he has property that's worth $50 a square foot, well, people prefer smaller properties because it's easier to plow, easier to deal with, easier to manage. So as a result, they will always prefer to get paid with property that's worth $100 a square foot rather than property that's worth $50 a square foot. The kal v'chomer lehektish, and it's certainly true for hektish. We'll see what that kal v'chomer is, God willing, tomorrow. So for Rabbi Yishmael, aval shmeina, achal shmeina, mishalom shmeina. So the first effort that we're trying to understand is based on the following question. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, are we saying it makes sense if the animal ate the nicest produce? So of course you have to pay the nicest produce. But achal kechusha mishalom shmeina, could it possibly be that if the animal ate a bad quality food, that it has to pay high quality food? That would suggest that it ends up paying more damage than the animal inflicted. So no, Amar of Idi Bar Avin, this is what we're talking about. Kigon she'achal aruga bein ha'arugos. Maybe he ate something among the different vegetables, and it was not clear whether he ate the good stuff or the bad stuff. So in that case, the mishalim shmeina. So he has to pay from the good stuff. Could that be what it means? But Rava asked the question. That can't be what it means, because Uma ilu yadinan de kachusha achal. Lo mishalim ela kachusha. If we knew that the animal ate the bad stuff, he would only have to pay based on the bad stuff. Hashta de lo yadinan ikachusha achal ishmeina achal mishalim shmeina. Now that we're not sure whether he ate the good stuff or the bad stuff, we're going to make him pay based on the value of the good stuff. It should be the person who was damaged responsibility to prove what the value was of the things that were eaten. So that can't be either. Ella Amarav Acha Bar Yaakov Hacha B'Mayaskin. Here's what we're talking about. Kagon Shahaisa Idis Deniza Kaziburis Damasik. Let's say that we have Damager Don. He has property that is worth $100 a square foot, and the he has a damage that is worth $100 a square foot, and he has damage of property that is worth $50 a square foot, and the nicest property that belongs to Victor, the victim. So Victor's property is only worth $50 a square foot. That's the best property that Victor has. So Upahapligi, this is where Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva differ. Rabbi Yishmael savar benizak shaiminan, that we look at the victim's property, and we say his best property is worth $50 a square foot. So as a result, Don can pay
From the
Victor
50.
from the $50 a pair. The Rabbi Akiva suffered to Mazik Shamina. No, Rabbi Akiva says no. Don the damager had property that was worth $100 a square foot. That's what he needs to pay in order to pay him. Now remember, the amount of property is such that it's equal to the value. So if he did $200 worth of damage, so then he has to pay either 2 square feet of the $100 a square foot property, or 4 square feet of the $50 a square foot property. So my time at the Rabbi Yishmael. What's the reasoning of Rabbi Yishmael? Nemer sada lamata, nemer sada lamala. In the pasuk, Perek Kaf Bet, pasuk Dalid of Shmot, it says the word field twice. Once it's clear that it's referring to the field of the damaged parties, and the second time it's unclear. So Ma said to Hamar Lamala Denisa. Once when we said it was clear that it refers to the damaged party. So Afsada Hamar Lamata Denisa. So too, we'll say that the second part time when it tells you about paying the choicest field, it means the choicest field of the damaged parties. Rabbi Akiva, Meitav Sadeo, Meitav Karmo Yishalem. The fact that it says his field, it's clear that it's referring to the one who's doing the paying. And so as a result, we're not going to change the subject between Karmo and Yishalem. And so as a result, therefore, it's got to be the damager's property, Dawn's property, that we're going to pay the nicest property. But Rabbi Yishmael, 1 second, right? Ahani Gzereshava, the Ahani Kra. 1 second, you have a Gzereshava and you have the verse. Why not use the verse to teach it? So Ahani Gzereshava Kamina. No, the Gzereshava tells you what I told you, that in fact we generally follow the value of the damaged parties, the victim's property. So we're going to focus on Victor's nicest property. But Hani Kra, when it comes to the plain meaning of the verse, could go into Isle Lamazik Idis Visiboris. Now we're going to deal with a situation where Don the damager has property that is worth $25 and $100. Now again, Victor's property is worth $50. So do we say that because Don's property is worth $100, and his best property, which is way more than $50, way more than $50 for the victim, do we say that we'll allow him to pay his other property, which is worth 25, or do we say no, he's going to have to pay the higher property? So that's the situation. Could go into Islay Lamazik. Edis Visibos. He has both great land and bad land. The Edis Lenizak, and there's good land that the victim has. The Ziboris Demazik Lo Shavia Keidis Denizik. And the lower property value of the damager of Dawn isn't equal to the nice property of the victim, of Victor. The Mishalim lay Mimetav Dide, and in that situation, he needs to pay from his own better property. The low Matzi Amarlay, and Dawn can't tell Victor, Ta'at Gabi Miziburis, you need to collect from my lower property land. About Gabi Mimetav. Rather, he gets to collect from the high quality property. So we have now explained this debate between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, but we have not explained Rabbi Akiva's Kal V'chomer for Hektish. So what did he mean that there's a Kal V'chomer for Hektish? Well, for the answer to this question and more, stay tuned to tomorrow's daf.
It's better tomorrow.
That's right. It continues to get better and better. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning tomorrow. Yes.